Good morning, Crafty Peeps. So today we're going to be working on our Mintay Paradise mini album. And to get started, we're going to start off with our base pages. So you'll need 5 sheets of solid colored cardstock cut at 9 1/4 by 6 3/4. On the 9 1/4 inch side, you're going to score at a 1/2 inch and then at 8 3/4. Okay, then I want you to fold on those score lines like I've done here. Okay, and then I'm going to take a piece of sticky note paper and I'm going to mark this one, and I'm going to do it on this side. Okay, so the side that does not have our little hinges on. Okay, I'm going to mark this as 1A. I'm going to put all of those to the side. So each one of these are going to be marked 1A. Okay, so you should have 5 of those. So our next paper that's going to go on top of 1A is going to be called 2A. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take 5 sheets of solid colored cardstock. You're going to cut them to 6 3/4 by 11 inches. And on the 11-inch side, I scored at a 1/4 inch. Then I'm going to fold on my score line, okay? And this is going to create a pocket, okay? And you just want to make sure that when you fold them over, they line up straight, such as this one. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this 2A, okay? Then for hinges for our little pocket right here, you're going to need 10 strips that are going to be 1 inch by 2 3/4. And I actually took off a 1/16 of an inch. So it's just a smidge under 2 3/4, okay? And I'm going to explain that to you in just a minute. Once you have those cut, I want you to go ahead and fold on the score lines. And each pair of these is going to be marked 3A. So you're going to have 2 pairs for each paper, all right? So we're going to have that marked as 3A, okay? So I'm going to move that over here, all right? And we're going to start off with our 1A. And normally I would use 1/2 inch score tape, but I'm out of it. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and use my glue. I'm going to flip it over, all right, and I'm going to go ahead and apply my glue all along my little strip here. And what I like to do, I'm going to wipe away my excess here. I like to kind of line it up here to make sure I'm doing this straight. And then I'm going to take my 2A on my folded over side. I'm going to just line these up all the way to the edge of that score line. I'm not covering the score line. If you cover over that score line, you've gone too far and it will not fold over. Okay, so I'm just going to burnish that in with my bone folder. Okay, and I'm going to double check because I use glue. Okay, I'm going to double check and make sure I got it good, and I did. Okay, so now I'm going to flip this over. Okay, and then your 2A is going to come right out on top. All right, and I'm gonna, there we go, fold it over again, just kind of burnish it in a little bit. And let me burnish this hinge in a little bit better. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and apply my glue to this one. Okay, oops, let me get my edge. And then I'm just going to line it up and burnish it in. So that leaves us a solid page and then a page with a pocket. All right. Right. Somehow do that backwards. No. Okay. Now this is the right way. Excuse me. So 2A is the one with a pocket, all right? 1A is a flat page. Somehow I accidentally folded that too much. Okay. So I'm going to get out 3A, okay? And so what I call these are my little Pac-Man mouths, okay? I hope that makes sense. So what I want to do is I want to have my hinges where the open face is on the inside, okay? And I'm just going to line this all the way up to the top. Just make sure you don't go over, and see where that 1/16 of an inch that I took off comes in handy. That way I'm not folding over onto my own hinge line and causing bulk, okay? So I'm just going to burnish that in a little bit better. And then I'm going to do the other side, okay, all the way up at the top, and then place my hinge, okay. Now, at this point, I want to let you know that in my directions for your pattern paper, I did not give you the cuts to go all the way down, okay? What I did is to save myself paper and time. I only went with my pattern paper to here, and then I used a leftover to cover this space. It's because obviously they're not going to see inside this pocket. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. If you do, you're going to need more than 12 sheets of pattern paper, okay? The way I designed this book is so that you would use one pack of pattern paper that is 12 by 12, okay? I'm just going to burnish that in. Make sure it's nice and smooth on there. And then now I have my pocket, okay? Really nice. And so I'm going to go ahead and finish these, and then I will be back. Okay, so I have all my 5 signatures or slash pages made. And again, I'm going to go over this. So you have your 1A, which is the side without the pocket. 2A is the side with a pocket. 3A were the hinges for the small pocket. Okay, now we're going to be working on our mats that will go inside this. So we have 1D, excuse me, let me turn it this way. So you're going to need 5 of these. They're going to be 11 inches by 8 inches, okay? And then on the 11-inch side, you're going to score at 4 3/4 and then fold over. Now, let me show you really quickly how this is going to work. So I have my 1D on top here. I have my pocket side page. This is going to go on top of a 1A, okay? Or it's actually going to go inside this little pocket here, okay? And then we're going to be working on our mats for 2A, okay? Those mats are 5 at 6 1/4 by 8 inches, okay? And then you can go ahead and slip that on in there. And again, like I said, I'm going to have the measurements for you for the pattern paper, okay? So now we can go ahead and start on our hinge. So let me get that ready for you and I'll be back. Okay, so now we're going to work on our hinge. I've already pre-cut and scored for you, and I'm going to show you what those measurements are. So you're going to need a sheet of solid colored cardstock that is 11 inches by 8 1/8 inches. You're going to turn it back to the 11-inch side, and you're going to start scoring. You're going to score at 1 inch, 1 3/8, 1 7/8, 2 3/8, 2 3/4, 3 1/4, 3 3/4, 4 1/8, 4 5/8, 5 1/8, 5 1/2, 6 inches, 6 1/2, 6 7/8, 7 3/8, 7 7/8, and lastly 8 1/4. Okay, Now, you're going to take a pencil like I did, and this is just to help you out. It makes it easier. You don't have to do this, but where you see you have a 3/8 inch, then you have a half, and then 3/8. So each half inch that you see here is actually going to be your hinge. Okay, so at 1 7/8 inches, so that's that score line right there. I'm going to make a mark of 1. That's to let me know where I need to apply my adhesive and to fold on that page. So then I'm going to do 3 1/4. I mark a number 2. At 4 3/8, I'm going to mark my 3, so that's hinge number 3. Then at 6 inches, you're going to mark it 4. That's hinge number 4. And then at 7 3/8, that's going to be hinge number 5. Now, to make it really easy on myself, I went ahead and I flipped it over this way, okay? So you want to make sure that you still have your score line at the 1 inch. If you flip it any other way, it's going to mess it up. So just make sure you do what I did, or make sure your hinge starts at 1 inch, okay? Or your score line, excuse me. So then again, I went ahead and marked them in the same spots on the opposite side. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab my tape. Okay, and as you all know, if you've watched my videos before, I always use a mixture of tape and glue, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start applying tape to where I'm going to have my hinges, right? So on those half inches. Now, since I use glue and tape, I am not using half inch score tape. Well, actually, I'm out of it. So all I'm doing is where the gussets are, I'm skipping the gussets. The gussets will not have tape on those until the very end. Okay? And I actually don't even put it on the gussets. You'll see after I do my video. So, and then don't worry about any tape hanging over. You are going to trim that off in the end, okay? Before we start folding, okay? Okay, so now I'm just going to go along here, and anything that's hanging over, I'm going to trim that off. Okay, and then I can go ahead and start burnishing it in. Okay, I want to make sure that tape is on there good. And then I'm going to start by peeling off step or hinge 1, okay? And like I said, I always apply glue. You do not have to do that. Okay, so I'm going to fold on that score line at the 1. And I'm going to make sure that these line up. If they do not, you may have possibly cut your paper crooked. Okay? So I'm going to burnish that in real quick. And then where I have that 3/8 inch line right here, I'm going to fold back. Okay? I'm not going to engage that first score line yet. Okay? I'm going to wait till the end when I add it to chipboard. Okay? Then I'm going to go ahead and start working on number 2. So I just continue on until I'm done. And I don't take off my tape until I'm ready to use that gusset. All right. So again, I'm going to line it up. Sorry, I'm kind of burnishing them in both at the same time. Okay. And I go back and I just continue on until I'm at the last one. Again, lining them up. Make sure it's even. wiping away my excess glue. And then again, I continue on by burnishing in all of these to make sure that I'm getting out excess glue and that they're nice and flat, no bubbles. Okay, peel it back. Not really peel it back, I'm just pulling it back to that 3/8 inch score line again and continue on. Oops, I forgot to add my tape to gusset number 5. Oops. That's okay, I'll do that in a second. Okay. And again, pull it back. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and add my tape to number 5. And then again, if you tape this correctly, okay, you should still have a 3/8 inch gusset at your end. Go ahead and trim that up a little bit. Okay. And there we go. Make sure again that it's lined up straight. Okay. And then fold it back. Okay, now I can burnish all this in. And now I can go ahead and engage those first and the last. Actually, it's kind of easier for me to do it this way. Okay. Okay, so now you should have 2 little wings right here. We're going to cut some of this excess off, okay? So I always just like to measure at the very beginning because that way I can remove some at the end if I need to. I'm just going to take off about 1 inch, okay? Now the next thing I want to do is create my chipboard for my gusset, okay? I know that not everybody does this, but I like to do it. I think that it helps make my hinge very strong. So let me cut my chipboard real quick for my album cover as well as this, and then we will be back. The chipboard for your hinge is going to be 2 3/8 by 8 1/8. And what we're going to do, I have 2-inch tape right here, and I'm going to go ahead and apply the adhesive on one side. Okay. If you hear any singing or humming, I apologize. It is my son. Okay, we're going to turn it around, and I'm just going to use my other smaller tape here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to remove that tape. I'm going to grab my hinge here. Okay, and as you all know, like I said, I really like to use glue as well, only because we're in Florida here. Okay, and I'm just going to apply it all along here. Nothing too crazy. And then I'm going to center this in here. Let me kind of lay my hinge flat real quick, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and lay it right where that first score line is. Okay, and then I'm just going to lay it on top of there. Okay. And it looks like my piece was a smidge too long. The measurements are correct. I just did not cut it right. And I will trim that in just a moment. But what I do is I just go ahead and adhere each one of these in there. Okay. Let me take off that extra. Okay, I trimmed off that little excess bit of chipboard, and then I went ahead and used my tape again and added it to the back side here. Okay, and then I'm going to peel it back, and if I have any tape hanging over, I'm just going to push it back up onto the chipboard so that it's not hanging off and in my way. And like I said, I'm going to go ahead and use my glue as well. Okay. And then I can go ahead and lay this down and smooth it on in there. Okay. I'll continue on with this end as well. Actually, I need to add a little bit of tape right there. And some glue. And I always hold this pretty taut and then press down at the same time. Hope that makes sense. That way I don't have any air bubbles. And if you have any paper that you can see, just go ahead and trim that off. And there you go. That is your hinge. At this point, we want to go ahead and add our tape to our hinge, okay? And what I want to show you is, hopefully I'm going to show you this in a pretty good way. I want you to add your tape. So this is a 1/2 inch. So if you had 3/8 inch score tape, it would be perfect because that would allow you to start the tape from the very tip, and that would leave about 1/8 of an inch space down below that you will not attach the page all the way down to the hinge, okay, to this board, the chipboard, okay? I want you to leave a 1/8 inch space from the score line onto the hinge, okay? I hope that makes sense. I don't have 3/8 inch score tape, so I'm going to use a 1/4 inch, and each one of these I'm going to just make sure I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch. And as you know, I always use glue as well, so I will use glue up here at this top portion, okay? So I'm going to do it on both sides, but I'm going to start off with this side first because it's just easier for me. Okay, and I'm just going to continue on until this is done. Okay, and if you have any excess tape, trim it off, but I'm going to wait until I do this side as well, so I'm going to flip it around. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing. Leave that 1/8 inch gap right there. And then once I'm done, I'm going to burnish these all in really well. And then we can start adding our pages. Okay. So now I'm just going to trim off any excess. Oops, try not to trim the paper like I just did there. Just whatever's hanging off, okay? Okay. We'll be right back. Okay, before I remove my tape and add my glue, as you know, if you use a 3/8 inch tape, you won't need to do that unless you live in a very humid area, which would be by the ocean. You may want to, or by a lake, you may want to add, use both glue and that. So as I said, you should have a 1/8 inch space on your hinge before it hits the base of the hinge or slash chipboard, okay? So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is to make my pages turn smoother, I basically just kind of run my bone folder over back and forth on each side just a few times just to get my hinges in working order and get them unstiff so that I can move them pretty easily when I'm putting these pages on, okay? Now, in the meantime, what I want you to do is go ahead and remove your mats, okay? That way they're just not in the way, all right? Just put them to the side until you've put on all your pages onto your hinge. Just going to put these to the side for the moment. Okay, so now I want to make sure that when I put them on my hinge, all of my pages, these are facing the same way, all right? That way they don't fight with each other. And, you know, sometimes when you make albums, you realize what I mean by that. Okay, so here's my hinge. I'm going to go ahead and lay these down. And I'm going to go to one, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape. And you could do this at any, you know, at the end if you want to. I like to paper my pages first usually. Now remember, I'm not putting glue all the way down because I want to leave that 1/8 inch space. And that's what I have my tape to mark it with, okay? Then I'm going to get my page, all right? And I'm going to go ahead and slide it right on here. I have it measured out perfectly where you don't have to fight it. And I'm going to go ahead and push it down initially, right? But don't squeeze tight yet. Pull up to that 1/8 inch tape line, okay? And make sure it's centered. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold down, fold my hinge down, and burnish that in. Okay? So I don't know if you can see that, but as you can see, there's that 1/8 inch gap right there, so it's not exactly touching, the page is not touching the base of this hinge, okay? Okay, so just a quick note, I want you to make sure that when you're putting your pages on, that your pocket is on the right hand side at the bottom on the opposite side, okay? So it would be going on like this, and that way when you flip over, this your second page would have the pocket on. So all the outside pages will be this one, and all the inside pages are going to be the pocket page. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I screwed up and I did it backwards, but that's what I'm going to have to deal with. So now I'm going to have to use magnets. The other way I designed it, you do not have to use magnets. So anyway, that was my bad. But anyway, so just so you know, we do make mistakes, and I don't want to have to start over again just because I put it on the opposite side. I'm just going to use magnets in this case, okay? So I will be right back after I finish putting this last hinge, and then we'll go ahead and start working on the album cover. Okay, for the album cover chipboard, you're going to need 2 pieces at 7 1/8 inches wide by 8 1/2 inches long. So you'll need 2 of those, and then you're going to need one that is going to be 3 1/2 inches wide by 8 1/2 inches long. Now we're going to be working on our covering our chipboard, okay? So you're going to need 1 sheet of yellow or solid colored cardstock, and you're going to cut it at 8 1/2 inches wide by 10 1/2 inches long. Okay, after you're done cutting your paper, what you're going to do is you're going to write a letter A on the center of this with a pencil lightly. I kind of did mine heavily, but I'm covering this up with paper. They're not going to see it. So on the 8 1/2 inch side, you're going to score at 1 inch. You're going to turn it to the 10 1/2 inch side, and you're going to score at 1 inch and 9 1/2. Okay, then we're going to set that one aside. Okay, for our next piece of solid colored cardstock, you're going to cut it at 8 1/2 inches, again by 10 1/2. But this time, on your 10 1/2 inch side, you will score it at 1 inch and at 9 1/2. You will not score it on the 8 1/2 inch side. So just to be clear, you're going to be marrying these 2 pieces together, and therefore you do not need to have a score line in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so now we're going to be working on C. Okay, so C is going to be a little bit shorter. What I want you to do is cut it at 5 inches, and then 5 inches by 10 1/2 inches. Again, you're only going to score on the 10 1/2 inch side at 1 inch and 9 1/2. Now I'm going to take this out of my way so I have my full area to work with here. Okay, I'm going to get out my score tape, and I'm going to add my score tape a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to double this up on the edge of my A, the right hand side. Okay, so that would be like this. Okay, trying to find my little, there it is. Oops. Trim off my excess here. Be sure not to trim your paper. If you're worried about it, then just fold it back onto the paper. I'm going to take that off, okay, after you burnish it in. And for me, like I said, I always add glue. And it's probably a good idea for you to add glue here as well. That way your seams, I'll show you that in just a second. So I'm just going to line this up to make sure that this is going to be on here straight. I'm going to take B and I'm going to attach B right there at that 1/2 inch. And I use this as my guide to make sure I'm placing this on here straight, okay? And if you have any tape hanging over, go ahead and roll it back. Just kind of be gentle. And then you should be able to just pull it off. Or scrape it off, however you want to do that. If it's let me go ahead and work with this so I'm not videotaping the whole time I'm doing this, and I'll be right back. Okay, at this point I'm going to add tape on the right hand side of B, again a 1/2 inch. Just going to trim off my excess again. And then again, I'm going to add C onto B. And line that up straight. Okay, it looks good. This time I didn't have any mess because I covered it correctly. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and erase my A, B, and C. Okay. And because I don't want this side to show, I need to change the direction of how I'm going to fold my paper. So I'll be right back. Okay, so for just a minute, I'm going to put my cover to my album over to the side real quick because I need to add tape to all my pieces here. So I'm going to start off by doing that. And I'm just going to do one side right now. Okay, I'm just going to burnish that in really well. And I'm going to continue on by adding tape to one side of my other larger pieces of chipboard, and I'll be back. Okay, so at this point, I want to go ahead and remove my tape off my first large piece of chipboard. Okay, and I've already folded up, or shall I say, folded on the score line, this one edge here. This is kind of sticking here. All right. And again, as you know, I'm going to use some adhesive. And not only does the adhesive help this stick for me better, but it also gives me a second or two to put this into place properly. All right, so best thing to do is always have it lined up to begin with. Okay, and then I can let, oops, guys, I lied. Hopefully I have time to remove this. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Oops. Okay, so I kind of turned this the opposite way. So this is A, B, and C. So we're going to start off with C. I want you to go ahead and make a score line right there, all right, at the 1 inch, okay? And then we're going to flip this over, okay? It's still staying on the C side at the start, okay? And then what I want you to do is you can go ahead and fold over on this score line, burnish it in a little bit. This is to just get it started. Oh, I got some, okay. Then I want you to take your first piece of chipboard. As you can see, I figured out something real quick and I kind of had to start over again. I kind of forgot because I've made this before with a different paper collection and I just forgot this one really important detail. Okay, so now I'm going to put this in the middle of my score lines, all right? So I'm going to line this up, and you know, the best thing I can do is I always try to line it up on my mat first, and then just press it in there and burnish it in. So this way, if you go the opposite way and you start on this side, the edge of your chipboard is actually going to be in the score line, and you do not want that. Okay, absolutely not. I'm going to flip this over and burnish it on this side really quick. Okay, then I always use 1/8 of an inch in between. So I'm going to do that now as well. Let me add some glue on the bottom here. And then again, press down. Okay. And then you should have your final piece. And that should lay in there perfectly. Don't worry about that score line over there. I still want you to keep it 1/8 inch over, okay? So be sure you do that. I always leave a little extra room just in case. You never know what's going to happen. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and place this down. Don't mind my little owl stuff here. I'm just reusing some chipboard from a previous project. I'm not worried about it because they will never see this. Sorry, I'm just removing my backings here. Again, I'm going to add some glue. And I'm going to line it up. Okay, make sure I have that 1/8 inch in between there. Okay. And then I'm going to burnish this in. Okay. Now I can go ahead and start turning this. That's going to be my new little storyline, okay? Don't worry about this. It's going to be covered up with paper. It does not matter. I'm just going to burnish all this in. And then I'm going to cut my corners. I always use the 0.125 on the Perfect Trim ruler. And I be sure to use that on all my corners. Okay, and in fact, I can trim off again some of this excess right here. And let's see, this is about 1 inch. So I can go ahead and cut that off. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and cut my corners. Okay. Alrighty, so now we can just go ahead and add our tape here. And I'm going to start off down here. I'm going to do this all the way around, and then I'll be back. Okay, so all the edges that don't have tape on it, I went ahead and added glue. I'm going to go ahead and fold this back over on itself just to start working my edges here. Peel off my tape, and then I can go ahead and start folding this up on here. Okay, and I think I'm going to just add some adhesive in here just in case, because, well, you know Florida. All right. I'm just going to burnish that in. Don't worry about that tape right there. You're going to be covering that up with more tape anyway, and paper. All right, and just work it on here. Oops. And then push your corners in. And then we're going to work our way around and do the other side. And let me move some of this tape out of the way. Definitely don't want it in my way. Like I got it in my way over here. There we go. Again, add more adhesive. Okay, just push in your corners again. Okay. And wipe off any excess glue. And I'm going to continue on. Okay, I see some tape covering over the edge. I'm going to push it back up on there. Okay. Push it up on top of the paper. And add some more adhesive there. I see it's wanting to lift, and that's what I mean, because in Florida the humidity is a killer here. Okay. The buzz kill. Shall I say album kill? Alright. Go ahead and burnish that in. Okay. Now I see some areas where it's bubbling up, and before I go any further, I want to make sure that I smooth that area down, okay? And then you're going to take your bone folder and gently rock these in here, okay? You again, see, I see some lifting up over here, and this always happens around the areas where you connect the paper, all right? Just add more glue in those little holes and burnish it in. Okay, I'm going to turn this around real quick. I'm going to do this edge as well. And again, see, there's more lifting. And again, that's where that seam is. So just, you know, feel free to be generous with the glue. Okay. I'm going to hold that down. All right. And then I can continue on to my final area. And once I get done smoothing this on the front and the back and filling in any areas that need to be filled in with glue, I'll be back and we will work on covering this part. Okay, so now we need to come up with our papers that will cover this top portion area. And so you will need 2 sheets of solid colored cardstock that are cut at 9 inches by 8 3/8. So you'll need 2 of those, okay? And I'm going to do these one at a time. I'm going to go ahead and add my score tape. Actually, let me do it like... Let me cut this so it's a little bit straighter. Have a better edge to work with. And you're just going to cover this whole area with tape. And for me, I'll just get the rest of this area with glue. So I'm going to burnish this in really well, get out any bubbles. Okay. And then on this side, I'm not going to lay it down because I still have some sticky tape showing, okay? But your 8 3/8 inch side is going to be your top and bottom, okay? And your 9 inches is going to be your width, all right? So let me go ahead and make sure I'm doing this right. Yep. Let me go ahead and remove my tape. Okay, and any tape that's hanging over, I'm going to push it back up onto the yellow at the tape side. Okay, and then I'm going to get out my glue, because y'all know I'm a glue freak. Especially getting the one edge where I didn't get enough tape on it. And then I'm going to start on my left. And I'm just going to leave about 1/8 of an inch from the edge at the left in. If that makes any sense. And then I'm going to lay this down. Nice and straight. Burnish it in, wipe off any excess glue. Okay, burnish it in really well. And then where my seam is, I want you to gently lift it. Make sure there's no bubbles coming up, okay? And gently, with the side of your bone folder, push it on in there and keep lifting it up as you go. Okay, and, you know, burnish in any bubbles, okay? So get all those bubbles out of the way. Smooth it down. Okay, now I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Okay. And actually, I see a little bit of lifting up. I told y'all tape is just not my friend here in Florida. I'm going to let that glue dry on there really quickly while I go ahead and tape up this. Oops. Keep going. I'm going to burnish this in, get all my air bubbles out. I see quite a few. Better if you get them out later now than later. Okay. Trim off any excess tape, being sure not to cut the paper. Okay, that looks good. Okay, I'm going to bring this back over here. Remove my tape backing. And as I'm doing that, I'm just pushing out anything that's hanging over. See, I kind of have these jagged edges of the tape hanging over. I'm going to push them back up onto the top of the paper. Okay. And then now, my glue. Okay, again, I'm going to line it up onto this edge here. Okay. And again, I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch. And I can burnish it in really quickly and wipe away any excess glue, and then keep on going. Get on my edges here. And I always like to do a little strip of glue on my seam here. And this does dry clear. Rub it in. And then again, I need to do that same thing where I start lifting up right there. Burnish it in. Use my little edge and keep pushing up. See, I see a little bubble down here. Got to get those out of the way. There we go. So now I have my album cover. And again, if I see any areas, smooth that down. Smooth any bubbles. And if you have any lifting, add glue in there. We have one last thing that we need to do, and that is putting in our book here. Okay. Okay, so we're just going to center it here. Hold on. Okay, so I want you to take your 2-inch double-sided sticky tape and you're going to put it all along the end of this, okay? Of your spine. And I'm going to have to trim some of this off. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to add some tape here. Okay, to center our pages in the middle of this, our little hinge, okay, you're going to need to make a mark, and I did it with chalk, but then I realized that you all wouldn't be able to see this, okay? So you're going to, your space right here is 3.5 inches, okay? So I'm going in between these little indentions right here, and that measurement is 3.5 inches, okay? Now I'm going to bring my ruler up a smidge from the edge, 1/8 inch, okay? So I'm going 1/8 inch in, and I'm going to make a mark at a 1/2 inch and at the 3-inch mark, and then I'm drawing a thin line right here, okay? And then I'm going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. Now, when you lay this down, it should fit nicely in there. I've already added my adhesive. Okay, and as we all know, I always use glue as well. Hold on. Okay. And I'm going to center this in here. Okay. And it's easier for me to turn it this way, okay? Oops, hold on, guys. I'm slightly off. Okay, so what I want you to do is go ahead. I got the width right, but that little 1/8 of an inch is just slightly off. So I want you to go ahead and center it in between that, if that makes any sense. Kind of hard to tell when you don't actually lay it down until you do it. And this is why I do the glue. And then you can go ahead and burnish it in on all the gussets, okay? Just to make sure it's in there really good. Okay, and then that's the end of the tutorial. All you have to do is cover it with your designer paper, your Mintay papers. Thank you guys so much for joining in this tutorial, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye, y'all.